And okay, it seems like that we are live again here from the Qt World Summit 2023 in Berlin. This is Giuseppe D'Angelo from KDAB, and today we're going to do some code review within Qt. Yesterday, I've tried to explain to my best what are the things that I look for when I do a code review. As I said yesterday, I try not to jump into the code right away, but I try to reason about the code first. I try to reason about why a certain change is necessary, or it's good, what it's doing, what is its context within Qt. Sometimes most changes these days are maybe simple bug fixes, simple one-liners. So indeed, the reasoning is pretty straightforward. There is a bug, I want to fix it, and then I can jump into the code. But some other times, no, I need to take some time. I need to read the motivations, read what's going on, understand the code. And I typically try not to see the patch itself first. I try to reason about what is the API doing. Are there any examples? Is there any good documentation that lets me and any future user of Qt better understand this new contribution? And only after all of that makes sense, I start spending time going into the code. So that was the theory. So today I'll try to make it in practice. I'll just jump onto Qt code review system, which is public, by the way. Anybody can go there and also push code, review code, contribute code to Qt. And yeah, let's see what we'll find today. I don't know. Let's see, because of course, Qt is in constant evolution, and there's many patches that go in, get merged, get rejected all the time. So I'm not exactly sure what we're going to find, but we're here together, we're here to learn. So let's jump in and have fun. So what you see on your screen right now is the homepage for the Qt project. Here you will find all the instructions that you need to set up for contributing some code. So you need to register, you need to configure Gerrit, you need to commit and push. I'm not going to go through these instructions right here, right now, because we don't have time. I'm just going straight into the code review system, find some patches, and review them. So here we go. So this is Gerrit, at least the installation that is available for the Qt project. This is my own page, and yes, I've got a bunch of patches pending for me. Some are already approved, some are waiting for my input. Or I could just go into the list of open changes against Qtbase, which is the repository that I work with most of the time. And I can just pick some of these changes, some that are interesting to me or something that I feel I can review. And I can review some of those, right? So, for instance, let's have a look at a couple of these patches, right? Let's start from this one. Okay, as I said, I start from the commit message. I don't even look at the code first. I just want to understand what's going on here. So there's a message here that says, okay, I want to assert if the connection type isn't UniqueConnection for Lambdas. I wonder what that means. An assert is harder to miss than a warning, which makes it more likely to get fixed. Thanks to Martin for the idea. And also add asserting inline code so that users compiling their code in debug mode can hit the assert even when built against the release build of Qt. Thanks to, well, me for the idea. Okay, well, that was very kind to this person, to Ahmad. I know who created this code because we had a discussion regarding a bug on the bug tracker, and I came up with this idea, and thankfully they have implemented it. So, but suppose that you're new to Qt, right? Suppose that you don't know what we're talking about. This looks like it's a fix of some sorts. Without really describing the problem, right? This says, okay, I'm going to do this, which is good. You always want to see in the commit message what the commit is doing. So this is reasoning about the implementation. However, it's not saying much about why this is needed, right? This is just telling you how I'm fixing the bug, not what is the problem I'm fixing. Thankfully, this actually is a commit that stems out of a bug report. And there is a link to this bug report right down here. So this is referencing a bug number. And I'm guessing, so if we go there, we can find a little bit of reasoning regarding this particular issue, which is just an issue that when you connect to a Lambda, this means that you cannot have unique connections towards Lambdas. Unique connections is a specific feature of a Qt signal and slot mechanism. And when you try to connect to a Lambda, you cannot use that mechanism. This has to do with the nature of Lambdas. Each Lambda that you connect to is a unique type, so Qt cannot distinguish Lambdas. and so you cannot figure out that you're accidentally connecting twice. And so far, I believe that Qt simply raises a warning, tells you this is suspicious, but you may ignore the warning, right? Warnings may get just buried within your log messages, and that's not exactly a good idea. Instead, apparently, this commit is raising that level from a runtime warning to a runtime assert, which you cannot ignore. If you hit the assert, your program is going to crash, so you will see that there's something wrong. But you can disable the assert, right? The point is that if you compile in release mode, even if you hit the assert, your program continues just fine. So at least the reasoning there, I guess, it's that we're not going to regress existing applications, at least when they're running in release mode, so in production. But if you're running them in debug, because you're developing them, then you hit the assert and hopefully you fix the problem. So yeah, I like this idea, also because I proposed it myself. And let's see a little bit about the code then, right? So what is this commit doing? Well, we can review a little bit here, and this is basically saying that it's checking a few things within Qt. I'm quite familiar with this piece of code, but what happens if you're not familiar? Like if you literally look at the patch, we are in the middle of some function, I guess. Where are we? We don't know. We don't see exactly from the code. We can extend a little bit of the context available to figure out a little bit better where this code being added belongs to, really. Where are we? So I know where we are. We are within the implementation of the connect call, the call that connects a signal to a slot, right? And basically this code is changing a little bit of a condition, saying that let me check if I'm connecting to something which is not a Lambda, in which case I go ahead. Otherwise, if I'm connecting to a Lambda and the type of the connection is unique, then this thing raises an assert and says, a unique connection requires the slot to be a pointer to a member function to a QObject subclass, right? That makes sense. Okay, so this looks legitimate. Now, this patch looks like a bug fix. And as I said, one of the things that we're looking for when we fix a bug in Qt is actually auto-testing this code. It is drastically important and dreadfully important that every bug fix comes also with an associated test. So the only thing I'm thinking about right now is that, can we test this code? Asserts are particularly difficult to test because the only way to test them is to violate them, and this means you need to crash your test. So that's a bit tricky. So let's see what this code does in that regard. Well, this code is changing some test code. So it's adding a few checks that are going to basically check whether I can connect to a Lambda. And if you do connect to a Lambda, then this is going to check that a runtime warning is raised. And otherwise, if you connect to something which is not a Lambda, then this does not hit the warning. All right, so this again makes sense. Although in general, it would be nice to have also the proof that the assert is working, right? Now, testing that a program is crashing is kind of difficult because you need to set up your test infrastructure to prepare for that and to reason that, okay, you just hit a crash that you were expecting to hit. So, granted, that's a much bigger job than this patch over here. But overall, it looks fine, right? Okay. It looks reasonable from a certain point of view. So, what else can we say about this? Well, I should now start and reason about, do I have enough information to approve this patch, or at least to vote for it, to say, yeah, I like this idea, I don't like this idea. Maybe I like this idea, but the code needs some fixes, or maybe I don't like this idea for the moment being. So all of that can be, of course, done here. Here I'm allowed to reply to this patch. I'm allowed to leave comments in line and whatnot regarding what this patch is doing. But I'm not going to read it now live, right? I need some more time to actually understand this patch. And most importantly, more often than not, when a patch is a bug fix of this nature, what I really like to do is to actually download this patch, apply it locally to my own build of Qt, build Qt with this patch enabled, and check if things are still fine, check if I like the error messages that I get and whatnot. So try to actually understand the working of this patch. Maybe I'm going to actually try and crash a Qt application by hitting that assert. So I'm not going to vote right here and now, as I said, live. But overall, I can say, yeah, I like this idea. No thanks, because I had it to begin with. But I can give some directions to the author that, yeah, this makes sense. And maybe add a smiley face, because, as I said, I gave the idea to begin with. And then I can just hit the reply button, and this will leave this comment on the patch. Yeah, so it's easy peasy from this point of view. But yeah, this was a bug fix, so fair enough. Let's now move on to something slightly more complex, for instance, a brand new feature. All right, here we go. There's this patch that says add QChronoTimer. Oh God, that sounds interesting. What is QChronoTimer? What are we talking about? Well, the patch goes on explaining that consider a QTimer, and I'm pretty sure that if you have developed with Qt for more than 5 minutes, you have encountered the class QTimer. It's just a timer, something that fires at a regular interval that you can choose, right? Fire after 10 milliseconds, 10 nanoseconds. Well, not nanoseconds, but 10 seconds, right? A way to have a timeout inside your application. And this patch argues that the interval in QTimer is just an integer. And that could be a problem. Why is that? Well, because integers in C++ have limited range, limited resolution. Since it represents a number of milliseconds, you have capped to 2 billion milliseconds or something along those lines, which is about 24 days. And this could cause an overflow within a QTimer if you're looking for a longer timer. Now, of course, this is theoretical, because who really needs a timer of 24 days? That sounds a bit strange to have to wait for that long. However, the point is that in the past few years, we're starting extending the QTimer API with the data types, such as the kernel data types, which can naturally represent ranges that are even longer than 24 days. And this caused a complication when it comes to the design of QTimer, right? The API is now not exactly clear about what is the range of the QTimer. Is it the 24 days imposed by the int-based API? Or is it even more, because the Chrono API tells you that you can have pretty much a huge range, possibly 2 to 64 bits. So yeah, more than the lifetime of the universe. And yeah, so the patch argues that this cannot be easily changed, because it means breaking user code, it means making the API not exactly clear. So here's the idea. Let's create a new stopgap class called QChronoTimer as a cleaner solution. Both classes use QTimer private. In QTimer, it's using an int. QChronoTimer uses a millisecond. And the plan is to merge the two classes in Qt7. The static method can be used. No need to duplicate the code in QChronoTimer. And then there is a little bit of a changelog that explains what this class is for. Okay, so what do I think about this, right? Look, I'm not looking at the code just yet. I'm thinking about the reasoning. Yeah, the reasoning is pretty sound, to be honest. So we have a problem in QTimer, we have a problem with that API. Now the question becomes, do I like the idea of adding a different class that is pretty much going to be a replacement for QTimer, except that it's going to have a Chrono-based API? I guess I do. I guess that it's due time to retire QTimer and stop with passing integers everywhere. Integers are not a great data type to work with. However, I also understand we can't just kill it, because people are relying on it. People are not using kernel data types yet. So it's good to introduce an incremental feature, in the sense that people can start migrating away from QTimer into this new class and start using this new class. Yep, I think I like the approach and I like the idea. Now, again, should I just jump and review the code then? Not so simple. First and foremost, I would like to review some docs or some examples. So let me scroll down and let me see if there are some codes, if there is some documentation, if there is some examples. And to be honest, I don't see many, right? I see that there is a little bit of documentation snippet over here. Then this is just the code, the implementation, which lives in source, core lib, kernel, whatever. And then I see a few tests. Good, the feature is tested, at least I know that. But yeah, I don't see examples, which kind of throws me off a little bit, and that would be certainly a remark I would give to this patch. We are reviewing the code. Can you please give me a couple examples of how this looks like? Maybe you don't even need to create new examples, because that sounds a little bit silly to have an example that just fires a timer. But if we decide that this is the way forward, it will be interesting to see, can we change the existing examples from using QTimer to using the new facility? Examples should always be using the latest technology, the best technology, so that a newcomer to Qt also learns the best practices right away, rather than learning the old technology and then they have to find out, oh, wait, there is a better alternative to the things I've just learned about from the Qt's own official examples, right? That does sound very good. Now, don't despair, because of course, things evolve and knowledge needs to be constantly updated. And of course, something that you learned some years ago may have changed in the meanwhile. As a company, as KDAB, we are pushing so much content. Jesper is creating an entire video series called Qt Widgets and More, about trying to stay at the edge of all this technology, try to understand what is the best practice, what is the best class to use for any particular use case. But still, here, what is the point of this new class? Why are we adding it if we're not going to use it everywhere, right? And that would be a comment, right? I could just already start commenting. Well, there is already some comment by somebody else, but I could start commenting like, is this going to be the de facto recommended class for timers? Shall we start changing documentation, porting examples, etc. to this new class? Right. And again, that's a comment that just stems from what this patch looks like. I'm not even reviewing the code yet, right? So, yeah, that would be a consideration on my side. Then the second step would be, let's review some examples or some documentation, if this patch comes with some. So, the documentation in Qt is usually stored into either dedicated documentation files or into the C++ file that implements a given class. And here, okay, sorry, let me make this a little bit more readable by having it rather than side by side vertically, because it should be more readable like that. And yeah, I started saying that basically the author is copying and pasting the QTimer documentation and changing it to be QChronoTimer, so which kind of makes sense. So the documentation should really match. Okay. Yeah, so the QChronoTimer class provides repetitive and single shot timers, and I'm not really sure why this has been changed from the original. So the original. Okay. From them on, okay, so this is the documentation of QTimer. Now, I happen to know already QTimer, so I'm kind of skimming through this. But of course, if this was a brand new class, I would need to read this documentation very carefully to understand what happens, what's happening over here. And indeed, there is many times where the documentation doesn't seem to have been copy and pasted, but also adapted. And so I'm going to actually note this. And maybe later on I will realize that this was a good change. I don't know. For the moment being, this is just a comment for me, right? I'm kind of a bit strange. Unlike QTimer, ChronoTimer doesn't have a single shot method. Using the QTimer once should work, right? Again, if I put myself in the shoes of a user, should work is something that should never be written. Either something works or it doesn't. Okay, so that's another thing that I should mark as should work. Okay. So right now, I'm basically taking notes for myself. I'm just saying this documentation is not really documenting something. I'm not understanding how to use this class, not even to mention how it's implemented. And so, yeah, then I could go on and review all of these docs. As I said, for the most part, this is matching the existing documentation of QTimer, which is being copy and pasted from QChronoTimer. And then, yeah, there is a lot of implementation, but I don't want to see the implementation. What I'm missing here is really examples, okay? So, yeah, typically at this point, I will probably stop reviewing. Why is that? There is so much more to see. Well, I don't want to see it, right? As I said, That's like the second level of reviewing. The first level is understanding if this feature makes sense, looking at examples, looking at documentation. To me, this feature does make sense, but it's lacking example and it's lacking documentation. There's something wrong there. And only after this, I would look at the code and try to understand if it makes sense. So I'm not going to look at the code just yet. There is so many more patches waiting for my attention. I think it's not fair if I spend the next 25 minutes nitpicking on every single detail and so on and so forth. Notice I'm not even going to like spell check the documentation or any of the sorts. That comes later. I first want to understand the feature. So yeah, I got a few draft comments in here, and I'm going to probably post them later on, saying I think this needs to be fixed right away. This patch should not go in as it is without fixing these bigger problems, so these bigger issues. Okay. So yeah, I'm leaving draft for now, and maybe if I got a few more minutes, let's review something else, something that I could say makes sense or doesn't make sense. I don't know. There's so many patches pending from Qt, right? That we could review, and yeah, let me just scroll a little bit and try to understand if there is one that makes sense. So let's see this one here. Okay, so another pending patch. QPageLayout fix pointer to unit conversion. The patch corrects the miscalculation in point unit conversion, ensuring correct margin updates. Previously, no-point units were rounded to 2 decimal places. When converting back to points, rounding was to 0 decimals, making the result always less than the original. And this could result in margins falling below the minimum allowed. Oh, that's an interesting one, right? So this fix rounds back converted values up to 2 decimals, ensuring that they are never less than the original to stay above minimum margins. Also, remove the unused function there and there. Right, this is a fun one. Okay, so it's clearly a bug fix as usual. And as a bug fix, it kind of makes sense what it's talking about. So the only thing we have to reason about here is that does the patch look okay? Does it come with tests? So it looks like it comes with tests, so we can see them later. But here I can see that this patch, sorry, let me just, I can relay out it a little bit. This patch is removing a bunch of code that says it's not needed. Okay, let's believe that. And then now here it's changing the code from basically just rounding values by multiplying things together to sealing the values after multiplying and then dividing again, right? So this is supposed to give you some precision. It says here up to 2 decimal places. Now, I would normally think, okay, that's good. And I would probably review the code, the test as well. And there is a nice test down here that is actually checking everything. I would probably review the code here and maybe, again, as I said, cherry pick it locally and double check that everything is fine. Now, thankfully, if I just want to check if the code still builds, even with this removed code that was there above, right here, and also I want to check if the tests pass, I don't actually need to do it locally. Qt allows me to run the auto tests inside the Qt owns continuous integration system. And by doing that, not only this ensures that this thing builds, but it will be checked that it builds and runs on many more platforms that I could possibly have, including things like Android or Mac or Unix or fancy operating systems that I don't currently have access to. So I'm not worried about that. If this passes the Qt CI, I'm pretty positive that this code is sound. I'm mostly worried about now we're changing a mathematical operation. Are we sure that we want this, right? Are we sure that the results are still wanted? And I don't have an answer for that right here, right now, right? I need to think a little bit about this, and I probably need to think about the math and where this code is called from. So why are we doing this margin conversion this way? So it's not entirely trivial. Thankfully, this code has already been reviewed by a colleague of mine, David, who's much more expert than I am in printing. And so he already has approved the patch, right? This patch has now got a code review +2. It's approved. And all it's waiting for is for the author to click this little button over there called stage. And once a patch is staged, then it will go through testing again. And if the testing is successful, then this patch will get merged into mainline Qt. So there's nothing else for me to do here, really, except if I really want to have a second pair of eyes over this patch and ensure that everything's fine. What I could also do is to add some other people to the review, because maybe, as I said, I'm not totally sure about this printing area of Qt, but I know experts in the area. So what I can do, if you add me to a review like this one, is just pull in some other people, right? That's still useful. That's still contributing something to Qt, not your own direct knowledge of the technology, but your social knowledge. You know the expert, so just bring in the expert and have their opinion on this particular piece of code. Right. And yeah, so that's pretty much my daily job. I wouldn't call it like that, really. I also do actual customer work. I also do some other things like R&D in Qt. But this is how it works, right? This is how you review patches in Qt. It is simple from a technological point of view. The access is immediate, and you do most of your work on the web using web-based tooling. Although, of course, you need to know what you're doing. You need to know C++, of course. You need to know a little bit about how Qt internally works, so to walk around, dig around the various areas of Qt. Thankfully, Qt is open source, so you can download Qt and exploit for yourself. If you have doubts about where is the code that does a certain thing, you can just reach out to the developers on the mailing list or in the menus and various forums and community channels and just ask them. I think there is a bug there. I'd like to fix it. Where should I start looking? And people will guide you there. Finally, yes, this process is open. Every single patch that goes into Qt gets publicly discussed. So everybody can chime in and say, I think this is good, or I think this is bad, or I've tried this out and it's breaking my application. I think we need to fix it another way. Sure, the more voices, the better. And the more opinions about why a patch makes sense or doesn't make sense, the better, right? So I think that's all for today. I would like to thank you all for listening to me for the last 30 minutes or so. I'll see you around, because I think we're going to see some other code reviewing in the future. In the meanwhile, if you're around at the Qt World Summit, feel free to just drop by our booth and say hello. Otherwise, again, thank you for your time. I'll see you around. Cheers.